covered the first principles, which is just quickly run through that. Continued business justification, learn from experience, define roles and responsibilities, and manage by stages. So let's talk now about the fifth, I think, principle, which is manage by exception. What do you mean by manage by exception? Now, it is a fact that in many organizations there's a degree of confusion regarding the idea of empowerment. You know, there was a fancy management jargon at one point in time several years ago, right? Empowerment, and that's a very real need because managers need to delegate work and responsibilities. Yeah. However, how do we avoid a situation where we micromanage? How do we avoid a situation when both management as well as those people who they manage are actually doing the same things? Not doing to avoid that, at the same time being effective in the way we manage. So one of the fundamental principles in PRINCE2 is that whenever possible there is management by exception. What does that mean? That means that for given 2 levels, there can be as many levels as exists within an organization. However, in the PRINCE2 management project structure, the different levels would have a mechanism whereby there's effective delegation and supervision by using the mechanism of managing by exception. Okay, what does it imply? That implies that if I were to give a set of work responsibility to somebody who is reporting to me, that empowerment has certain boundaries set to it. So, for example, if cost being one of the factors of measuring progress and effectiveness, if there's a budget given of say 100,000 units of currency, dollars, pounds, ringgit, whatever, then there's quite likely going to be an upper ceiling and a lower ceiling, which basically says, look, for the next stage of this project, you've got a budget of 800,000 to spend, and as long as you stay within the boundaries, I'm going to give you 10% plus 10%. I'm not saying I'm going to give you 10% extra money. I'm just saying that if you forecast, remember, it's forecasting. If you ever forecast anytime during the stage that your costs are going to exceed by more than 10%, i.e. out of 100,000 for this stage allocated, that if in the middle of a stage, for instance, you forecast that you would likely by the time you come to the end of the stage have spent 111,000, right, which is beyond the kind of 10% margin I've given you, then you should call my attention to it, right? You trigger what we call an exception, right? You trigger an exception and you let me know, and I now look into it and take back control momentarily, right, by either instructing you what to do, having a discussion with you, and we figure out what's the best course of action. It doesn't mean that you've been a bad boy as a project manager. However, it does mean that you have got to a situation whereby you need to get me involved. If you don't get to that situation, go ahead and do the work, and I'm quite happy knowing that you can do the job. So besides money, of course, there are other factors involved. There are 6 areas that PRINCE2 sets mentions that tolerances can be set. Time, of course, if you're given a certain time, we can have a plus and a minus, from that time, just like cost, where you have to inform me. Quality is a little bit more difficult because we're talking about we need to look into in what way we have set aspects of the products to be measured in terms of the quality as you move along. We also can be looking at the benefits, right? If the benefits is that the company can save $1 million by delivering the output of this project and subsequently reaping the benefits. And if somewhere along the line you estimate that that's not going to happen, again you trigger off an exception. Yeah? We talk about time, cost, benefit, risk again, right? Risk, we're looking at, there are of course individual risks and there's collective risk as far as the project is concerned, right? All the risks come together. Risk tends, I think in my view, that tends to be one of the most difficult and complex areas for a project manager to be involved in. Some organizations do have their own risk managers, and it pays dividends for the project manager to get help from them. What's the next one? The next one is scope, right? So we have time, cost, quality, benefits, risk, and scope. Scope again, perhaps IT people have a lot better idea about the problems of scope. Like scope creep is one of the problems that they tend to have. So once we've defined a scope for a project, again, if within a stage, as well as overall the projects, the project manager realizes that he's not going to be able to deliver the project according to the full breadth of the scope within the kind of upper and lower boundaries, then he has to trigger an exception again. Okay, please bear in mind that when you go through the rest of PRINCE2, there is an exception report which is triggering up, waving the red flag to upper management, as well as an exception plan. They're two separate things, but one happens after the next, and you can guess which one happens before which one. Yeah. So again, bear in mind the benefits of having management by exception mechanisms within the projects, and incidentally, this management by exception happens at every two levels adjacent to each other. It is not just between the project board and the project manager. The project manager will use the same mechanism to deal with the team managers, and similarly in terms of the way the project board deals with the people above them, same thing. Yeah. So management by exception is a basic principle, a very important principle in PRINCE2 that needs to be followed. Yeah, the whole idea is to save everybody's time. It saves the management time, and it avoids a situation where the management has to practice micromanagement. Let me rephrase that. It tries to make efficient use of management time in terms of managing the people below them at different levels, because they do not need to be looking over your shoulder, yeah, and to have the mechanism that triggers off their attention whenever that's necessary. Okay, that's the end of this quickie on PRINCE2, and we've talked about management by exception. And for the next session, we'll look at another of these basic principles, and which is focus on products. Till then, bye bye.